My name is Patrick Doliny. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Marine Corps. I am currently working as a senior advisor for the Infinite Reality, which is a metaverse company. And I had the pleasure of being here at this incredible event. Originally, we wanted to do cyber Go-Phishing, which was a deep dive into the different types of vectors that we are all experiencing. But I wanted to keep it very interactive. And so didn't have a bunch of slides. I had maybe 3 slides that introduced myself. And then we started going through the process of highlighting a number of governance, things that they've done specifically to their organization that are cybersecurity related, whether it's a governance that they've implemented or a set of tools that they've configured to assist. And certainly at the heart of it all, which is the Go-Phishing, which was the theme of the cybersecurity, it was all about understanding the vulnerability that we still have as an organization across multiple sectors, where people are still taking phishing attacks and social engineering. We opened the floor and I asked a few questions, and it just naturally progressed across a number of areas. My only regret is that we just didn't have enough time to cover it all. The main direction was to be honest and open about some of the challenges and some of your successes. And I wanted to engage them at a very personal level. So I didn't want sort of the canned answers while we have cybersecurity training and awareness campaigns throughout our organization. I wanted to get to the meat of it. So whenever anyone would speak about what they've done specifically, I would ask some more probing questions. For example, we've implemented a cybersecurity awareness program. My follow-up question is, how are you able to measure the effectiveness of your program? And then they would engage in the conversation in that way. So there are so many factors to cybersecurity, right? And the CISOs are maturing. There's still a lot to be uncovered. I think we're taking our lead on a lot of the governance. Certainly, with GDPR, CCPA, others are helping pave the way in a more mature fashion for us to be myopically focused on data privacy. Because big data is here to stay, and everything else needs to be complied. And so the way that I engaged the team was to really not only give me the answer to what it is that they're doing, but to demonstrate how effective they are. So we used a risk management approach, which was, I explained to them that risk management is about the likelihood times the impact. How are you making decisions on where to invest in your cybersecurity awareness campaign and or training? And we went through a pretty extensive conversation around a multitude of topics. So that's an interesting question, right? Because the reality of it is that every organization is different. Their DNA is rooted in the culture of the organization. Not to be confused with the culture of the country, right? But the culture of the organization. Some organizations are very open-minded and very promoting of users and feedback and input. And there, what I would do is take a look at a gamification approach. So gamification is all about understanding and identifying ways to reward them throughout the process so that you keep them interested. I shared with the team in the workshop 2 specific areas that I did recently. One was a cybersecurity ransomware whodunit. And it was basically, everyone has a persona very similar to any kind of dinner whodunit. And perhaps they can adopt that to more of the retreat for the upper management, but certainly can be adopted across other areas of the business as well. And part of why the theme was cyber Go-Phishing, it was really about, I instructed them to write 2 positive things on a piece of paper and then talk about them. Because often enough we look at, and we learned this from our earlier session, the efficacy and the emotional attachment that you have. People tend to be very guarded with sharing vulnerability. And so my goal was, and hopefully I achieved that, was to allow for them to know that vulnerability is still their biggest asset, not their weakness. And so to be able to talk about an issue that they have only opens up the dialogue between other CISOs to say, hey, I've addressed it this way in my organization, perhaps you can adapt it that way. And unanimously agreed at the end of the session that we wanted to use CAS as a platform to launch a subcommittee for cybersecurity within the CAS system. So I was super excited about that. I asked the question, how do you define culture? And interestingly enough, everyone had their flavor. There's no wrong answer, right? Because it's unique to your experience and your interaction and so on. But what I learned is that a lot of people still think that it's top down as opposed to bottom up. And many organizations, many CEOs and presidents of group organization, if they don't lead from the front, and I had some cases where an individual in the workshop actually talked about how the group president led the charge to take their cybersecurity awareness, not just a training, but actually completed that and so on. And I said, that's culture, right? Because now what you've done is it's not just top down, it's also bottom up, because people are typically very interested in seeing that they are supported in their efforts. I also talked a little bit about my role many years ago with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The U.S. has an organization that is mandated for law enforcement to report on any child that's missing. And many of them, even back in the days, it was all about cyberbullying, it was about internet safety before it became a buzzword of cybersecurity. So I've evolved into that role over time. And I said, that was my weapon. What's in it for me? I found that niche that I wanted to do that. And I actually had a picture of my family on the screen, which was one of 3 slides that I had. I didn't do a PowerPoint presentation. We had a interactive dialogue around the challenges and the successes that we've had as a CISO. So we spent a lot of time talking about not just phishing from an exercise perspective, but what are we doing to help educate our end users? But one of the things that stood out, and many of them actually shared what they've put in place for that, is social engineering. So it actually starts at home. And so a lot of the behavior, whether they are, using shared passwords or posting certain things, that social engineering creates a profile. And it's not, so we actually had that conversation. It's not some guy sitting in the back room trying to hack, and it's artificial intelligence. So everything that we're building to help make our lives easier, well, the bad actors are doing the same thing. They're using the same technology to create that profile. And when they create the profile, it has, so you're able to get targeted on your social media, you're able to get targeted on your professional media, you're able to get targeted at your work. So the behavior is all about social engineering. And that was, going down that rabbit hole opened up a whole conversation. I was pleased to see just the interactive session. Everyone spoke about what they're doing, how they're doing, and also sharing ideas between each other. I was thrilled. Right, made my job easier because I just sat back and listened. But I asked a probing question, like, if you say this, in one of the topics that we talked about was ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Architecture. How is that impacting? And then we talked about cybersecurity insurance. The list went on and on and on and on. So it was really, we just didn't have enough time. Well, so the main takeaway was that we, as a CISO subgroup, to leverage CAS, cybersecurity or CIO as a service, to stay connected, because the shared services, the shared information, the knowledge transfer that we have collectively can help perhaps mitigate the next threat, or even assist in the recovery process. There's no shortage of governance, right? There's whether you're 27001 or NIST compliance or a whole host of other governance that, oversees your area. We talked about my transition from the military over to a paramilitary organization like the Broward County Sheriff's Office. And the biggest issue that we experienced during that time was, how do we protect the data? But we still have to share. We want to share with our neighboring cities. We want to share criminal activities across platform without compromising the data. So it's a delicate area, but the main takeaway was to maintain that group. We started here, but it certainly is not the end. So I think I shared that at the very beginning when we launched CAS. When I was transitioning from the military, I had an opportunity to start as a CIO. And there was a lot of benefits to that, but I really didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone that I can turn to and say, hey, these are some of the issues and concerns that I have. How do you handle that? And in a paramilitary structure, it's all about disciplines. And so using that, and I see now, a very good friend of mine wrote a book called The Leadership Manifesto, which has 8 principles of leadership that is shared in a mentoring perspective. So I chaired a subcommittee for cybersecurity for Nova Southeastern University and their innovation center. So we have a cyber range where we can invite other CISOs to do tabletop exercises and identify what's the best approach to dealing with this particular vector. It's evolving. Some organization, if you recall back in the days, the CIO, the director of IT, actually reported into finance at some point, right? That was kind of the birth of information technology. It made sense to be under finance because that was the main users of technology, the early adopters. And then the other business unit came along. So right now, the CISOs are, in some organizations are reporting into either the president or the CEO. Others are still reporting into the CIO. I think as Amazon made a big statement, right? They're not a logistics company. They're not an e-commerce company. They're a technology company. So you, as a technology company, it's very, the maturity model definitely lends for the CIO to take that charge. And at that point, then absolutely the CISO can report into the group president or the group CIO because there's a separation of responsibilities that needs to be identified and really not only for the protection of the organization, but really as it matures. So, years from now, we'll see where it lands. But for now, it could be a mixed breed.